Hey y'all, happy Sunday. I have been drawing a lot of braids recently, so I thought it'd be fun to do a little tutorial on how I shape and fill in braids for anyone that is interested. It's pretty basic to start. On my left over here, I just have a color palette, and you can pick whatever base color you want. You just need to make sure you've got a shadow, a base, and a highlight. You could do blue, you could do red, you could do neon green, doesn't matter. Over on the right, I've got my outline of my braid, and it's pretty basic. You just want to get that general tapered shape. I'm going to start first with Procreate's default soft airbrush, and I'm going to get that color in black first. Get a pretty big fill here. All I'm trying to do is just fill in the center of this braid with black. I don't really want any white showing through in the center of my braid because that wouldn't make much sense. Once I've got it roughly filled in, I'm going to switch over to my shadow color, and I'm going to be making these 45-degree angle lines that will form the skeleton of my braid. And you can see the origin of each of these lines is about halfway on the previous line. And you're just going to take this all the way down, again getting that taper towards the bottom. At the low end of each of these lines, I'm going to be basically taking that end and pulling it around in a curve until it meets up with the line below it. And these are going to obviously be the curves of my braid. And I like to break it up like this just so I can see where my individual braid segments are going to be, because that's going to help me fill in with my base and my highlight colors. So with the base, right here on that curvature, I'm going to put in a nice little swath of that color on each of these curves. So I'm going to fill those in. Then I'm going to blend with one of Laura Rubin's hair brushes. And this one's pretty soft, and it gives it a little bit of a light texture, but it's very forgiving with the blending. So the way I like to blend is I like to pull the light color out first and then push it in. Pull it out and then push it in. The reason I like to do that is because the dark is always going to be more dominant, so I like to get that lighter color out on the forefront and then lightly push him back in. Now the shape I have here is a pretty rigid looking, so I'm also going to blend by pulling that light color into the center a bit. And a braid isn't pulled in just one direction anyways, so this kind of gives it that three-dimensional feel. Then I'm going to switch to my highlight and do basically the same thing, except the little bloops that I put on there are going to be a little bit smaller, and they're going to be right at the apex of this curve of each braid. You could kind of imagine that's where the light is going to be, kind of hitting that braid the most. Again, pulling and pushing this lighter color in with the darker colors, and then pulling into the center. Awesome. So this is a good starting point for this braid if you want to kind of finish it here. If you want to add a little more texture, I take a more textured hairbrush. I go back to my shadow color, and I start pulling in from the center. And this just helps give it that vibe of actual hair strands, gives a little more texture, and then you can blend with that same brush, just pushing and pulling. So that's how I make my braids, and I think it's nice to break it up like this so you can see where you're supposed to put the lights versus the darks versus the highlights. So let me know if this was helpful and comment below. Bye!